Hello.
Well, hello there. How are you?
Doing great. And yourself?
I am doing absolutely wonderful. Got my summer cut at the end of summer. I was like,
Oh,
it's time, it's time, it's time.
okay. Looking marvelous.
Yes, ready for the show today.
Yeah.
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic since I got my, appointments set up.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I was sitting there looking at all the different quotes you had up there, and I said, tell the negative committee that
Mm.
meets in your head to sit down and shut up. I love that. I love that.
Oh, okay. Darn, I forgot to pick that.
Yes, I love that quote. I'm like, I might have to use that. I might have to sneak and steal that quote.
Hey, we got to do what we got to do.
Got to do what we got to do. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as always, it's Thursday. High noon on Thursday, and we are all excited about today's show. I am Georgia Allen. I bring you greetings on behalf of GA for Just Is, because it's just is the right time to do the right things. So, as always, I want to thank Mr. Henderson Vaughn, aka the Dream Maker, aka Captain 85, for being positive, opening up the airwaves, someone who looks out for the community and want to see things get better day by day. And so we always want to say thank you to you for allowing us to spend time on the airways to just share a little information that hopefully will make a difference in our community. Each week, we bring you a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. And we do that because we want to truly reach out across all different groups and cultures and everywhere to try to turn some of this foolishness around. We've been hearing from folks who have plenty of money, and they make all types of noises, and
Oh,
those noises are not necessarily true. And so we need people out there that's going to bring forward some truth in this particular time. So, with that being said, today we're going to talk a little bit about the March on Washington. I was privileged to be able to attend the March on Washington this past weekend on Saturday, the 26th, and we had a phenomenal time. There was an excellent crowd, people from everywhere, met people from California to New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania to Georgia and Tennessee. So we met people from all over and it was wonderful. And to anyone who have never ever attended a March on Washington, we strongly encourage you the next time around, take some time out, put it on your calendar. It's always around the 28th of the month, which is the actual day of the March on Washington. It
mm,
took place August the 28th, 1963. However, they do try to have them on the Saturday prior to. So you want to take a look at the calendar and say 10 years down the road, what day is the possibility of the March on Washington? So you can keep that time blocked out so that you can be able to attend. And I'm telling you, it is a phenomenal, phenomenal event. The people are there, they're like family. And if you want to ever see a family reunion of people that look like us, go to the March on Washington because it is truly a family reunion. Now, with that being said, today's topic, of course, is March on Washington. And I always like to use the first letter of the alphabet of what I'm talking about sometimes and just call it something a little different. And so I'm going to call it Mighty Onward Warriors. And I say that because if we're going to make any changes whatsoever, one, we got to have might. We cannot be weaklings. I'm letting you know right here and right now, you cannot be a weakling. The other thing is, you better be moving forward. You cannot be backwards. So it's got to be an onward movement. Okay. And then finally, you must be a warrior. You must be a warrior. Because I'm going to tell you, you're not going to win if you're not prepared and ready for war. You're not going to win. You're not going to achieve any goals. Your children are not going to be in a better position. And at the end of the day, if you are not a true warrior of justice, if you're not a true warrior of equity, if you're not a true warrior of economics, you will not win. That's it. You will not win. So anyway, I'm a little bit excited. Again, I attended the March on Washington. It took place on August the 26th, which was this past Saturday. However, August the 28th, which was Monday, was the true anniversary of 60 years of the March on Washington. Now, I don't know about you. When the march began, I was 10 years old. When they did the first march to Washington, D.C., I was only 10 years old, 60 years ago, 10 years old. So you can do the math. But I have been fortunate enough to attend two. This is the third march. I attended one, I want to say it was the 30th year march. And then I attended the 50th year march. The 30th year march, I attended it with the Youth Council of the NAACP. So we had an opportunity to take our children to Washington, D.C. and be able to participate in the March on Washington. And that was phenomenal because they could see firsthand. They could meet people from all around the nation, all around the country, and get to talk to people from other places and what was going on in their city or what was going on in their state. And that's important, people. It is very important that we are familiar with what is happening with our family. And I call all of them family. When I was at the march this weekend, I walked up to people and I said hello, and I introduced them as my family. I introduced myself as their family and that they were my family. Okay, because guess what? They took our history away from us. They took our ancestry away from us. So we don't know, in many instances, what part of Africa we have come from. We don't know many times what tribe or what group or what have you. So therefore, we must consider all of us family. Because at some point in time, when we do our DNA testing or whatever, and we want to go back and look, you never know. Some of those people that were walking around that was from Ohio could be my cousin. Some of those people that was walking around from Pennsylvania, I may be related to.
Yeah.
So therefore, we must treat each other like we're family. When we begin to treat each other like we are family, which we are, you will see a definite different outcome. So I'm very excited to be here today. I'm very excited to just kind of take a look back. And a lot of times when we think of the March on Washington, we kind of just think of the I Have a Dream speech, but we think of the sanitized version. We don't think of the substantive version of the I Have a Dream speech. We also don't think about how all of this came together. All the people that were involved in putting this together. It wasn't a snap of the finger and yes, we're done. No, there were teams and people and logistical people and people that had backgrounds in all types of areas that were able to formulate this so that the march could be all that it can be. And when I take a look back, I look at people like Bayard Rustin. He was a logistical genius. He not only did the logistics of just putting this march together, he went so far as to create an organizing manual that he sent all around the country to local organizers so that they would know what to do, so that they could get prepared. So it wasn't just, I'm going to send you this manual and you're going to be ready in a snap of a finger. No, you're going to teach, you're going to train, you're going to get these folks ready so that they know what to do. They know how everything is going to be set up when they get to Washington, D.C., and they are ready. They are warriors getting ready to go on the battlefield to fight for justice. And while this is not a battlefield at the civil rights movement on March on Washington, where there's going to be fighting and and disagreements or anything like that, it is still a battlefield for justice. It is still a battlefield for economics. And so that battlefield was there. That area between the Washington Monument and the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial, that was our battlefield. Now, it may have been a nonviolent battlefield, but it was a battlefield nevertheless. It was still a battlefield. And so Bayard Rustin, he put together that organizing manual, and that organizing manual laid out the logistics. It laid out the talking points, but it also laid out the demands. See, warriors, we are there to demand something. We're not there to just, lolly-dotty and just be kind of cute and sweet and all of this other stuff. We're there to make demands because things are not where they should be. And so in order for us to turn those things around, in order for us to just come out there and demonstrate, we have to have demands of legislation that we want to change to make things better for our children and our grandchildren. We have to make demands to make things better for our senior citizens. We have to make demands to make things better for our veterans and others out there. So I love what he did because he put together a manual, because a lot of times we do things off the top of our head. And when we do that, we forget a lot of stuff. But when we put it in a book, when we put it on paper, when we put it in writing, that changes outcomes. And that's what we're about today. We're about changing outcomes. So what did you do on Saturday? Were you able to watch any of the march or anything at home? Because everybody couldn't go. So there had to be some folks that stayed back and still was in the fight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember the first one I went, in the 50-year march, it was a lot of people, and it was a great, well, you was there, it was just a great collaboration with, with all races and organizations. It was a phenomenon. And this year I have an opportunity to make it. Mm-hmm. And, but, I was there in spirit. All
right. And like I said, everybody couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But guess what? There were people that were at home and they were marching in their spirit. They were watching it on TV and they were marching in their spirit. They were warriors at home, and we're going to have warriors everywhere. Warriors can't be all in the same place.
Right.
Then you ain't got nobody that what they say, watch that flank. You don't have anybody to watch your back.
Hello.
So you need to have warriors everywhere. And that's what I like about being mighty onward warriors at the March on Washington. And we want to take a look back at some of the things that took place, because again, America sanitizes everything. They sanitize history like crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable how they have sanitized Dr. King's message. When in fact, he called them into account. That the I have a dream speech was calling America into account for their wrongdoing. And so when someone had the audacity to ask him, when will you be satisfied? Dr. King was looking at them like, have you lost your mind? He said, we can never be satisfied as long as a Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. Does that sound like today?
Hello.
60 years later? Does that sound very much like what is going on today? Police brutality, one after another. Our young people are being shot. And if they're not being shot by the police, young lady can't even go up to the door and knock on someone's door and say, could you give me my children's iPad back, without an idiot shooting her through the door? A young man can't knock on a door and say, I'm looking for my little brothers, and someone automatically assumes that they are a bad guy. And instead of asking them, why are you here? They go and shoot them, claiming it was fear. Now, we all know they did not fear that little child.
Right.
We know they didn't, okay? So again, we cannot be satisfied when we hear of things like Breonna Taylor and we hear of incidents like George Floyd. We cannot be satisfied. So Dr. King reminded them that no, we're not satisfied. We are not satisfied, and we cannot be satisfied. And so in the original march, he also talked about jobs and freedom, but he also talked about equal rights, decent housing, desegregating the schools, giving all children a better education because they don't have used books, they have new books. Okay, so we can't be satisfied. We can't be satisfied when we're traveling down the road and we can't even find decent lodging. We cannot be satisfied when you're moving our people from a smaller ghetto into a larger ghetto. We can't be satisfied with that. And we can't be satisfied with that today. When we go through our communities and we look over just across the street, there's one community that have all the luxuries you could ever want or see. And then directly across the street, that sidewalk is not paved. As a matter of fact, they don't even have one.
Right.
We can't be satisfied. We cannot be satisfied when we see this stuff in existence 60 years later. March on Washington, 60 years later. We cannot be satisfied when we still don't see an end to bias. When our check is 64 cents less, we're making 64 cents to somebody else's $1.
Yeah.
So we can't be satisfied. We can't be satisfied when it takes women all the way till June or July to finally make the money of what someone else has already brought in like the first couple of months of the year. Okay, it takes us all that long time to just get caught up. So there are so many things that Dr. King talked about years ago with regards to jobs and freedom that is continuing to happen today. So we can't be satisfied. We cannot be complacent. We cannot sit around and wait for someone to fix things for us. We must be warriors. We must be mighty. We must move forward. We must be onward. We cannot be backwards, and we cannot go backwards. And we must be warriors.
With the situation now, even with, like, say, for instance, Hollywood, all they got to do is picture what Hollywood is going through now with artificial intelligence, taking the writer's position.
Right.
Now, the same thing they did to us in slavery. They wanted us to work for less than I worked when I was 18 years old for $1 an hour. In order for me to make any kind of money, I had to work 100 hours. And then the man, if I went out on a truck delivering, he said, well, you worked a lot of hours this morning. I said, yes, sir. He said, you 17 and a half hours? What did you do? As I was on the truck delivering, to all the bases, with Hepper. He said, well, I ain't paying you for riding. So you got 17, you rode for about 7 hours. So we're going to take that 7 hours off. Did you eat lunch? I said, well, I was driving. He said, I ain't paying you to eat lunch either. That's another $1. I wound up getting about $10 after working 17 to 18 hours. So people don't understand what the march is about when we are still sitting here today. When their side get upset and angry, they march because they want more than and they already making money.
Right.
But we continue to fall for the rope-a-dope and believe the politicians saying that, hey, we're gonna do this. And soon as somebody start doing it, look what they start doing. Look at what they're doing today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you shared that information, I'm like, I grew up in the country. We worked on the farms and stuff. And many people own land or whatever, but they didn't have the tools or whatever to farm the land that they had. So, well, actually, they didn't even consider us owning the land that was the farming land. They call that sharecropping. So what you do is you do the land, pick the crops, and then the so-called plantation owner would go through and they say, this is how much it costs for the seed. And this is how much it costs to till. This how much it costs. And so by the time they minus out all of that, you did good to make any profit whatsoever. But most of the time you were always indebted from year to year to year. Yeah. And so the work that you were doing sounds very, very similar.
Yeah.
It puts you in a position where you never come out of debt. And so with that being said, we must talk to our young people about indebtedness. Because see, we still owe that check. You know, that check that was marked insufficient funds that Dr. King went down to Washington, D.C. to collect. Hello. You know, where the government gave us a check. Well, actually, it was a promissory note.
Yeah.
You know, and we were supposed to be full heirs here in the country of America. You know, a promissory note. But then when we got there to cash the check, it was marked insufficient funds. Okay. It didn't give us the same life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness that may have given other folks.
Yeah.
It was insufficient for the needs of our community, for the needs of our people. And so it's just critically important that we understand what the march was all about. What this civil rights march was all about. Okay, warriors, it was about voting rights. It was about civil rights protections. Okay, they claim you had civil rights, but if they're not doing anything to protect you, that's you're kind of not getting civil rights. You're not getting human rights. It was for economic justice. You know, it was an end to segregation, end to police brutality. And so we were marching for better. 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, okay, all of those years, we were marching for better for our children, better for our grandchildren, better for the next generations. Okay, this is a legacy march. It's a legacy march. And so we want to make sure that with this march, you know, and again, you know me, I like to use acronyms. Okay, we want to make sure that we are mighty onward warriors and not messy, obstructionist weaklings. We don't need any weaklings in this fight. Okay, we don't need it. We don't need the obstructionists in this fight, and we don't need the messy people in our fight. We need you to be mighty. We need you to be strong. We need you to be vigilant, because that's how we're going to make things better for those who are coming behind us. So I always like to take a moment to try to have a few announcements. And I don't know if you have any today, but I wanted to announce that Ms. Juanita Williams, who is a retired Navy chief, she will be doing Wisdom from Juanita. And this is a community event that is held at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Baker Road. And September the 26th, she is going to be talking about VA benefits. And if you live in Virginia Beach or anywhere in the Hampton Roads area, you know we have a whole lot of military. We have all branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and the Coast Guard, along with all of the other people that are support staff to our military. So we want you, if you are available, please come out. It starts at 6:30, I believe, and only lasts about an hour. So hour and 45 minutes at the most. And we want to encourage you to come out, support it. You want to gain information wherever you can and then use it and share it, because it's no good for people to provide information to our community if we're not willing to make sure that we share that information with others so that they have the knowledge and the ability to make differences and changes in their lives. Because if you know that you're entitled to something and someone is sharing that information with you so that you can go and gain access, because a lot of it is about access. If you don't know about it, then you're not going to look for it. But once you know about it, you also need to know how to gain access to those things that we're sharing with you. So again, Juanita Williams, retired Navy chief. The event is going to be at Ebenezer Baptist Church on September the 26th. You'll be able to go online and Google Wisdom from Juanita. The other upcoming activity, and this is backed by popular demand, Mount Olive Baptist Church SeaTac Community Civic League. So it's going to be held at the Baptist Church, and the Baptist Church is now meeting at Lita Building Auditorium. So it used to be old SeaTac Elementary School. And so on September the 30th, 2023, from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., there's no charge, but we're asking for donations. So please give a free will donation because they're working to improve the park at SeaTac. And so there are going to be many artists there, Mount Olive Mass Choir, the historical Gregory Brothers, there's Matt Gay, Generation Mime, and a number of other people that's going to be there. Eugene C. Benjamin, we always call him C. But anyway, just want to let you know, keep you posted about things that are going on in our community, and encourage you to go out, be a part of the community, be willing to serve. And the last thing, I always try to remind people that the city of Virginia Beach, I am in Virginia Beach, so I'll talk about Virginia Beach. City of Virginia Beach has what they call appointments to council boards, commissions, committees, and councils. You fill out a talent bank application to let people know that you're interested in serving on a board or a commission. Some of you have background in seniors services. Some have background in social services. You have a background in the libraries. All of these different commissions, committees, they have term limits. Some are 3 years, some are 4 years. So they're different time periods. So if you feel like, well, this is something brand new to me, let me serve on a committee that has a shorter term. There are teams that serve 2 years. We now have a Virginia Beach Cannabis Advisory Task Force. So if that's something that you're interested in, sign up, let them know that's what you're interested in, and then check with your local city council member and talk to them directly. Let them know that's something you're interested in. But again, the Cannabis Advisory Task Force is only a 2-year term. Urban Agriculture Advisory Committee is only a 1-year term. So there are a number of boards, commissions, committees, councils that you have an opportunity to serve on. If you live in the city of Virginia Beach, please fill out your talent bank application. For those of you who don't live in our city, by all means, check with your local area and find out how you can get involved so that you can begin to make suggestions, give advice that can possibly change outcomes in your city, your county, your local area. So I always like to make sure or try to remember to remind people of making sure that they signed up and try to get on some of these committees. Now, some of you will say, Well, I've applied a number of times. I have not been able to get on the committee. Do you belong to your local branch of the NAACP? Well, I'm in Virginia Beach, so I would encourage you to join your local branch of the NAACP. That will allow you to have persons who can speak on your behalf and work to try to get you on some of these boards of commission if you live in Virginia Beach. Now, if you live in your other cities, whether it's locally or throughout the nation, I encourage you, join the local branch of your NAACP, wherever you're located. And now you have an advocate. You have an advocate. And that is what helps to change. And that allows you to have some leverage. Right now, you're operating as a single. And I like a quote that I use. When you're united, you bargain. When you're divided, you beg. So you're going to have to answer a question. Do you want to bargain or do you want to beg? Because united, we bargain, but divided, we beg. So you're going to have to make that decision of whether you want to bargain or whether you want to beg. Your choice. All right. Well, that is our announcements for today. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the March on Washington. Again, in order to put together something that is this large, because it was 250,000 people. Thank you, Henderson. Wonderful. Keep that picture up. It was close to 250,000. That's what the estimated amount was. But the civil rights strategist was Bayard Rustin, and he worked along with A. Philip Randolph and Dr. Martin Luther King. But it consisted of a coalition of civil rights organizations, labor organizations, religious organizations who came together in order to do this March on Washington. And so when you have a march like this with this many people, you definitely need some type of manual. And that is what Bayard Rustin did. And he put that manual out so that it would be a guide for mobilization. And that was holding meetings, talking to the people who were interested in coming to Washington, D.C., raising funds. Because keep in mind, you weren't going to be able to get there if you didn't have some source of transportation. So whether it was train, buses, airplane, whatever, you needed a way to get there. You also needed to be able to distribute that information throughout the communities, from state to state, from city to city, from area to area, neighborhood to neighborhood. And the 1963 event was both a moment as well as a movement. It was a moment or a season in time, but it was also a movement. It was an organized movement in order to push and demand for changes in this nation. And they had a ton of speakers in the original March on Washington, and they had a ton of speakers this time as well. They had, of course, Dr. King was our keynote speaker, but they had the youngest speaker was former Congressman John Lewis. They also had the executive secretary of the NAACP at the time, Roy Wilkins. They also had the executive director of the National Urban League, which was Whitney M. Young. They had musicians like Marian Anderson and Joan Baez to sing. But they also had Dorothy Height, the only woman who actually spoke at the March on Washington in 1963. A lot has changed since 1963 because we had a number of women speakers on the podium for this March on Washington. And we have this picture up here because we want you who are listening now or who will listen later or watch later, we want this to be a reminder to you of, especially our young people, what you can get done when you're willing to mobilize, when you're willing to have a strategy, when you're willing to ensure that logistically speaking, that you have things in order so that things can work well together. They had people like Dick Gregory, Harry Belafonte that spoke at the first March on Washington. And for us, this time around, we had people like our president of the NAACP, Mr. Derek Johnson, to speak, Derek Johnson, President Johnson. We also had Mark Mariel, who's the head of the Urban League. And so we had a number of excellent speakers to share with us what's going on with regards to areas that we need to focus on as a people today. So with that being said, we are so excited to be with you today to talk about the March on Washington and, as I like to say, mighty onward warriors. So taking a quick pause, sorry. Trying to do the several things all at the same time. But it is critical when we're looking at doing something of this magnitude that we mobilize. And with this March on Washington, there were a tremendous amount of young people from numerous colleges and universities, from numerous youth organizations and associations. The Y was there. The National Council of Negro Women were there. Of course, the NAACP and the Urban League was there. NAN was the actual coordinator, which is Reverend Al Sharpton's organization. The SCLC, they were there. The Anti-Defamation League, they were there. So there were numerous people there to share their messages with us with regards to what is taking place now and what do we need to do next, because it's always about the next thing. It's always about solving problems. So I'm ready to come back on air when you're ready to open up the camera to me. One group that was excellent was Generation Vote. And this was all of these young people who are working to get their young people registered to vote, but not just getting them registered to vote, but making sure that they have logistics in place, making sure that they have minibuses, making sure that they have what is necessary to transport young people to the polls. See, a lot of times we forget that we sometimes need to take advantage of the resources that we already have in our community. If you go to our churches and many of our associations and organizations, they have resources that could perhaps be made available to ensure that we get people to the polls to vote. How many people vote is critical. We have a tendency to vote in certain elections, but not vote in all elections. And we need more and more to garner our support so that we're voting in all of the elections, not just some of the elections. Because if we're only voting in some of the elections, guess what? The chances are, and yes, I have Dr. King on my shirt today. I forgot to make sure that my screen was just right so that you can see Dr. King. And a lot of times we forget that there's more to voting than just registering. So we go out and we have these huge rallies to register people to vote, but we don't keep those people that we registered engaged. So the March on Washington, of course, was also about voting. And the reason why it was about voting is because we needed legislation changed in order for us to have a different outcome. Our outcome was horrible in many instances because there were laws that were not being passed. Therefore, the March on Washington was a demonstration per se. And as Dr. King always believed in, he definitely did not believe, he always believed in demonstrations, peaceful marches, peaceful demonstration. but he definitely believed in legislation. He believed that we should change the way people vote on issues. If there were issues that we were concerned about, we needed to make sure that we elected persons who were also concerned about those issues so that we could get legislation passed in our best interests. So I want to ask the listening audience, and I know you're not going to be able to respond back right now, but I want to ask this because I want you to start thinking about this. We're all getting older. I thought about this when I went to the march this weekend, and I thought about those that we have lost. I thought about the Sidney Poitiers. I thought about Nichelle from Star Wars. I thought about Cicely Tyson and many others who we've lost. And I said, what if they began to have 5-year increments for the March on Washington and a larger event on the 10th anniversary? So instead of waiting until the 70th anniversary, what if they had a 65th, since they just had the 60th, what if they had a 65th anniversary? Because I know I'm getting older. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm getting older. And so I have friends who are 10 years older than me. I have a whole bunch of friends that are 10 years older than me. So in 10 years, my 80-year-old friends will be 90. And hopefully they will still be able to walk and get around and do all the things, a lot of the things that they're able to do now. But there's a possibility that they may not be as mobile 10 years from now than they will be in 5 years. Also, a lot of the people who are here right now may not be here 10 years from now, but they may be here 5 years from now. And so as I was looking at the March on Washington, and now that is getting up 60 years old, and then it'll be 70, and then 80, and 90, and 100 years old. And again, this is something to be thinking about. What if we did 5-year increments and then a larger event on the decade anniversary? Just something to pause and think about. And the 5-year increments could be a report card per se. That report card could identify what is going on in every state and how are they stacking up? Where are the shortfalls? What are the things that we need to do, that we need to go back home at the end of that 5-year march and make sure that those things that we reported on are fixed or in a process of being 50 to 60 to 70% better than they were 5 years earlier. What if we looked at it from a different standpoint? For those of you who see me on a weekly basis, you know, I don't really think in the same way that most people tend to think. A lot of people tend to just kind of follow the crowd. And this is the only way that we've done it in the past. This is the way we've always done it. And I'm always looking for some new ideas, not just from me, but I'm looking for new ideas from young people, always looking for new ideas from young people. And so when I was looking at this march, and I was looking at the fact that this year was 60 years, and I was like, and I was 10 years old when the first march happened. So if we have a 65-year anniversary, then I'm going to be 75. But if they wait until it's they wait until the 70th year anniversary, that'll make me 80. And so I was like, do I want to have a march in between that time? And my spirit has been saying, maybe we need to have a 5-year incremental march. And maybe we need to take a look in all of our cities, in all of our states. And we know some of the problems that have been taking place. We know that people have been attacking healthcare. We know that housing has been an issue for decades. Shouldn't we have a report card on where we stand with housing? Shouldn't we have a report card on where we stand with homelessness? Shouldn't we have a report card on where we stand with education? Shouldn't we have a report card on where we stand with the criminal justice system? Shouldn't we have a report card? I suggest that we have a report card. And 5 years from now, I suggest that we go to Washington and do what the original marchers did. We have our talking points and we lay out our demands. And whatever state we are representing, whatever city we're in, or whatever, we want to make sure that the work that we're doing leading up to 5 years from now, leading up, that we are progressing. And that when we reach the 65 years of the March on Washington, we should be able to report back to our forefathers, to Dr. King, to A. Philip Randolph, to Roy Wilkins, to Whitney M. Young, to Dorothy Height, to Ella Baker. We should have a report card that says, you guys are no longer here, but this is what we have done. This is what we have achieved. These are the people that we have removed from office because those people were not doing the work that we demanded of them. So they were no longer viable. So we removed them from office and we replaced them with some new blood. And with these new people that we have placed in office, they're working out some of those things that you talked to us about over 60 years ago. They're working it out. They're getting things done. They are making progress. And in some instances, some of the progress on some issues are slower. But in other instances, some of that progress is a lot faster than we even anticipated because we made demands. We applied pressure. We used our leverage. And guess what? We had mighty onward warriors. And those warriors, they were not giving up. They were not giving in. They were not bowing down. They were standing up and they decided that they were going to fight. And guess what? Those warriors weren't just adults. They were our teenagers. They were our grade school students. They were our high schoolers. They were our college students. They were our young adults. And those young people, they became congressmen. They became mayors of cities. They became our governors. And they became our president of the United States, our senators. And you know what? And they made things happen. They used their technology. They used what they learned from the old civil rights activists. I hate saying old, but they used what they learned from the folks that came before them, and they weren't dismissive. They just elevated it a little more. They didn't put it down. They just said, okay, how can we refine it? How can we fine tune it? And they worked and they built it into a better building. And so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to continuing this fight for justice. And we need to be working everywhere. We need to have warriors everywhere. We need to make sure that our people are engaged, our young people are engaged. One of the things that Miss Juanita taught us is that young people age 16 and 17 can pre-register to vote. So wherever you are listening, pre-register your children when they turn 16 and 17 and get them registered to vote, because at age 18, the system is supposed to automatically notify them that they are now a voting eligible citizen. So we want to take advantage of all of these opportunities that are out here and available to us so that we make sure that we plant the foundation so that our young people will have a solid rock to stand on. I am so excited for today's show. As we must end the business as usual attitude, and that's everywhere. That's in all of our states. That's on the local level, and that is throughout our nation. We must end the business as usual attitude, and we must recognize and elevate those who came before us. I was looking at many of the people that were from the era of Dr. King, like Marion Wright Edelman. She's 84 years old. Mary Frances Berry, she's 85 years old. These people have been out here in the fight. Nikki Giovanni, out in the fight, fighting for us. And we need to be thanking them for the work, the service that they have done. Again, Dr. King went there with the message, and he refused to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. He refused it. He decided, he says, no, you got to make the check good. And so for our young people, you need to pressure our nation to make the check good. We need to cash that check. That check has been sitting out there a long time, insufficient funds. It's been out there a long time. And I'm going to end the program today with a few quotes by Dr. King that I love. So I don't know how you feel about him, but I know I love him. One, right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. And then he has this saying, let no man pull you so low as to hate him. I know it's tough. It's tough not to hate people that get on your last nerve, but don't let them pull you so low that you hate them. The one that a lot of people like to use all the time, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of convenience and comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And if ever there was a time of challenge and controversy, 2023 in the United States of America, we're in a time of challenge and controversy. And then two of my favorite are left. Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men. And the final one is nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. So those are my quotes for today from the wonderful Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Again, we celebrate, commemorate, and continue the work that he did before us. This is Georgia signing out. See you next week.
You've been listening and watching GA for Justice with your community activist, Georgia Allen. And don't forget to share this with other people on your social media platform. Email them, text them, tweet them. Hey, you can even do it the old-fashioned way. Call them and tell them, hey, GA for Justice I just texted to you. Until next week, from 12 until 1, thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye.